Some stories are just so incredible, they're almost hard to believe. This is one of them. We're talking about a 15-year-old girl who, in the absolute darkest moment of her life, did way more than just survive. She became the detective, the lead witness, and the reason her captor was finally brought down. This is the story of how Kara Robinson hunted a killer.
And that quote right there, that says it all, doesn't it? This isn't just a story about survival. It's a story about consequences, delivered by the one person a predator never, ever should have underestimated.
So let's set the scene. We're in Lexington, South Carolina, on what seems like a totally perfect June morning. You know the kind of day I'm talking about, just an unremarkable, ordinary summer day where nothing interesting is supposed to happen.
So you've got Kara Robinson. She's over at her friend's house, and they're planning on going to the lake later. But first, she's got to do this simple chore, watering the flowers. She's still in her pajamas, hose in hand, just a completely normal, everyday moment.
Then, a car she'd kind of noticed drive by before pulls into the driveway. A guy gets out, looks pretty normal, tucked in shirt, baseball cap. He walks over and asks a simple question. Is your mom or dad home? Kara explains, hey, this isn't my house, and my friend's mom isn't here either. The whole thing seems totally harmless.
And just like that, in a split second, everything changes. That friendly facade just melts away. The man pulls out a handgun, presses it to her neck, and that normal summer morning is completely shattered.
He forces her into this big plastic storage container in the back of his car. He binds her, gags her, and suddenly she's in total darkness. In that terrifying moment, her very first instinct was to pray, but her second instinct? Her second was to fight. Her will to survive was already kicking in.
After about a 15-minute drive, the container gets dragged inside an apartment. And this right here is where the entire story just flips on its head. It stops being about what's happening to her and starts being about what she is going to do to him. It's about observing, memorizing, and putting a plan into motion. In this moment of just pure psychological cruelty, her captor says they're going to watch the news to see if she's on it, to see if anyone even misses her. I mean, it's a taunt that's designed to completely break her spirit. But for Kara, it's a window into his mind.
So what do you do? When you can't fight with your hands, how do you fight back? Well, Kara's answer was incredible. She decided to turn her own mind into a weapon. She made a resolution. Not only was she going to escape, she was going to gather every single piece of evidence she could to make sure he could never ever hurt anyone again.
And this is where her incredible mind just took over. As you can see, she started this mental checklist, just absorbing every single detail. The magnets on his fridge, the doctor's name on a piece of mail, the serial number on the very container she was held in. She even noticed long red hairs in a brush, a huge clue that maybe a woman lived there too.
And she didn't just watch, she engaged. And get this, it sounds kind of crazy, but she starts talking to him. She starts conversations about his pets, he had lizards and fish, and about his time in the military. And through that, she learns he was discharged from the Navy. Every little piece of information was another clue.
Over the next several hours, she had to endure the absolute unthinkable. But afterwards, her captor's arrogance became his biggest weakness. He told her she'd be there for a couple of days, gave her drugs, and he seemed to think he had completely broken her. He got complacent. He got cocky.
He restrained her to the bed, handcuffs on her wrists, connected by a rope and a C-clamp to the bed frame over her head, and another restraint on her ankle. Then, he went to sleep right next to her, totally confident that his captive was secure. He could not have been more wrong.
Okay, so now we come to the most heart-pounding part of this story. Kara wakes up before sunrise, and she can hear him sleeping just inches away from her. And she knew, right then and there, this was it. This was her only chance.
And what she does next is it's mind-blowing. She couldn't get any leverage with her hands, so she manages to get the C-clamp to her mouth and uses her teeth to slowly, turn by turn, unscrew it. Once her cuffed hands were free, she wiggled down to get the ankle restraint off, and then, as quiet as humanly possible, she slid out of that bed.
She gets her clothes on and she makes her way to the front door. She's almost there, but there's one last huge obstacle. A metal, accordion-style closet door was right next to the exit, and she knew opening it was going to make a ton of noise. Not only that, but a vacuum cleaner and that big plastic container were blocking her path.
There was just no way to do this silently. Like she said, she knew the noise would wake him up and that he'd be able to see her through a window. So there was no choice. She just went for it. In one single motion, she moved the container, shoved the vacuum, unlocked the door, and she ran.
In this image, it says everything. Barefoot, handcuffs literally dangling from her wrist, she bursts out into the early morning light and runs straight into the road. She flags down the first car she sees and tells the shocked driver, "I was just kidnapped. I just came from that apartment right there."
But her escape wasn't the end of the story. No, it was the beginning of the end for her captors. And it was the start of a search for justice for so many others who weren't so lucky. So she gets to the sheriff's station, and that mental checklist she'd so carefully put together, it becomes the foundation for the entire investigation. She recounts every single detail she memorized. The mail, the magnets, that serial number, the red hair and the brush, everything. Her information was so good, so specific, that when investigators showed up at the apartment complex, the property manager knew exactly which unit they were looking for. And just like that, they had a name, Richard Mark Evenitz. But by the time police got there, he'd already fled. A manhunt was officially on. And this is why Kara's escape was so monumental. It didn't just save her own life. Inside Evenite's apartment, police found evidence, like a newspaper clipping, that directly linked him to the unsolved murders of sisters Kati and Kristen Lisk from 1997, and later to the murder of Sofia Silva in 1996. Because of Kara, a serial killer who was hiding in plain sight was finally exposed. He was tracked to Florida, and during a police chase, Evenites took his own life, ending his reign of terror for good.
You know, Kara never got her day in court to face him, but her actions spoke so much louder than any testimony ever could. And this quote from her, it just perfectly captures her mindset. She acknowledges what happened to her, but she absolutely refuses to be defined by it. She will not give him that power.
And the story doesn't even end there. This is the final incredible chapter. Kara was given an award for her bravery and for helping to close those cold cases, but she went even further. She took this harrowing experience and turned it into a calling by joining law enforcement herself. From a captive fighting for her own life, she became a cadet dedicated to protecting others. Her story is just this powerful testament, not just to the will to survive, but to the strength to turn trauma into a force for good.